When you take a moment and think about it, elephants and humans actually have quite a lot of things in common. Both of our species live this kind of overly complicated social lifestyle where we spend the majority of our time loving, protecting, and nurturing family. We take great lengths to teach our young the skills they need to survive in the world around them, and we all do best when we support one another. And as it turns out, we're both suffering pandemics.
The first reports just came from a few scattered deaths of elephants in March, and back in March there were still a few tourists on the ground.
Damn, can 2020 get any worse? It feels like somebody left on an episode of Twilight Zone.
Tourist guides have been spotting a few elephants dying and have been unsure why they were dying. Normally it's dead obvious that if it's anthrax or if they've been shot, you can tell that basically straight away, whereas everyone's just a little bit perplexed.
All right, let's put some of these pieces together. Just as the globe began to shut down because of the COVID-19 pandemic, elephants in the Seronga Pan of northern Botswana suddenly began to mysteriously die off.
That area's got between 15 and 18,000 elephants. So that's a significant number of elephants. It's well over 10% of Botswana's national herd. It's about 4 or 5% of the global population. And until we know what this is, we cannot rule out the whole of that herd being at risk.
We're talking about a part of Africa famous for its wide open landscapes, open borders, and suddenly elephants just begin to drop dead? What's going on? When did biologists get this on their radar?
Around the 25th of May, some local conservationists flew over the area, and in a 3-hour flight, they identified 169 carcasses. Now, this is when alarm bells started to ring a lot more, because spotting elephants alive or dead from the air is a challenge. To see that many carcasses in such a short period was really quite startling.
If you've never seen an elephant in the wild, honestly, it's an experience you'll never forget. I've seen both live and dead elephant sightings.
At this point, a couple of organisations started to say to the government, why on earth isn't anything happening? Why are you not doing anything about this? Why are these samples not going to any labs? Why are there elephants still dying in the northwest of the country?
Hold on. Something just doesn't seem to add up here.
And then a month later, so we're now towards 20th of June, thereabouts, they sent in a team of vets and some press, and they took some samples ostensibly.
And on July 2nd, after this story exploded around the world, the Botswana government even took to Twitter to address this issue.
The trouble is, whatever this is that's killing the elephants is something either novel or complex. Because if it was simple or new, or simple or well known, we'd already know what it is.
I have always wanted to visit the Okavango Delta, and elephants are one of my favorite animals on our planet. So to think that they could be under threat or harm in that exact part of the world is highly disturbing.
So it could easily be a pathogen. And if I were to put money on this, I would say it probably is. It's probably a disease. But what type of disease? It's harder to know. Is it a virus? Is it something respiratory? It's more likely to be something that's affecting the nervous system. So yeah, who knows? Is it prions? Is it something else?
So maybe we're bordering on the edges of discovery. Something previously unrecorded or even unknown in elephants might help us understand elephants better to ensure that tomorrow's elephants thrive in the wild.
Then there's a prospect of it being a poison.
We've all heard this bedtime story before, right? Poaching is unfortunately an all too familiar avenue when it comes to wildlife conservation. In fact, the Letaba Elephant Hall in Kruger National Park arguably has a wonderful setup to discuss this very issue. And if that doesn't hit the issue close enough for you, consider checking out Rachel Newer's Poached, Inside the Dark World of Wildlife Trafficking. This book gives you an in-depth look into the current situation of wildlife on our planet.
That was certainly the immediate thought was, well, this is probably just a mass poisoning event, because either poachers want to get the elephants for their ivory, or local people want to get the elephants because elephants smash their crops into their houses, and there's a lot of human-elephant conflict in Botswana.
It's probably fair to say that Botswana has a history of elephant-human conflict, but really that's no different anywhere else in the world, like North American ranchers and wolves.
But poisons tend to have a secondary effect on scavengers. The most commonly used poison in the region is cyanide, and that does have a secondary effect. It stays in the system for about 72 hours. So when the elephant goes down, anything that then feeds on it in the next 72 hours also drops as well. But it could be another type of poison. There's a few others that are used locally that don't have secondary effects. And there's people with lots of incentives, very strong incentives to kill elephants, so that's a possibility.
This conversation can get so challenging because look at them, they're adorable. They frolic together, they play in the mud, they have tummy rumbles. Elephants are absolutely amazing. Yet, if you have to live with these animals day in, day out, they can pose real challenge to your health and well-being. And at the end of the day, ultimately, each and every one of us would do whatever we had to care for our families.
The elephant crisis is a microcosm of what's happening to the planet in general, essentially. It's an ecological collapse that's happening in a very small area, but this is happening everywhere across the world. And the reasons are the same. It's humanity's impact on the planet. Conservation matters to everybody. When the Amazon burns, everyone's affected. Our oxygen gets less for everybody. Partially what COVID-19 has done, it's demonstrated to the world that a conservation problem in China affects us all. Because COVID-19 came from a breakdown of conservation in Wuhan. And if that hadn't happened, we wouldn't all be locked in our houses.
Look, I get it. It feels like every direction you turn these days, there's a new issue demanding your attention. But really, the solution to all these doesn't have to be complicated.
There's so many little actions that you can take. The easiest thing we can all do is eat a little bit less meat. Just have sausage one time fewer a week. In fact, you'll feel better for it. Voting is an incredibly important thing to do.
And so, my fellow Americans, ask not what your country can do for you, ask what you can do for your country.
Vote with your feet. So visit natural places, go to national parks, make them seem valuable to the types of people that make decisions about funding national parks. Because people care about national parks, people want to go there.
We find ourselves here in this wonderful bush oasis. Zach on camera. And if you would pan to the left here, tourists are inescapable even if you're in the middle of nowhere.
I will never ever forget the first time I saw elephants in the wild.
We had a wonderful elephant sighting. They're just beyond the brush that way.
It was this lone bull on the side of the road taking a bath in the middle of the Kruger, and he was having the best day ever in that mud hole he had sunk himself into. I remember somewhere in the middle of the sighting this very visceral moment of, "You're not in Kansas anymore, Dorothy, this is for real," kind of shot through my whole body and changed me.
For me, the most important thing that we should all do, spend time in nature.
Today we celebrate our world's wet resources. Here it comes. Elephant poo. Come check this out. Get in nice and tight, Jeff.
They've recently announced that over half of global GDP is either moderately or highly dependent on nature. And they've released the steps that we need to go to prevent the next pandemic and guarantee human security over the next 10 years. Everything they're saying is about protecting nature. Like, these are your guys from Davos, your suits from Davos that clap each other on the back and clink their champagne every year. And they are now the ones that are saying louder than any that we must put nature first.